Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Sunday night, and I'd like to talk to you once again about where we were the week before and where we will be coming up. And last week you had two interesting, I think, video presentations. The one we uh, started off with, and then one I added a little bit later on. Dan Pink talked about the science of motivation and why business doesn't do what science knows. And then I brought in a little piece which was not very animated and maybe a little bit hard to understand. The audio wasn't that clear, but Dana really started to talk about more things about how motivators do and don't work, and the social aspect versus the financial aspect, and things of that nature. And I think we started to see how that financial means are not always the best, and they are not the only ways to go. But in many cases, I think that's the knee-jerk reaction of most business people. We think our businesses are there to make money. We think the people working in our businesses think the same way. So how do I motivate somebody? Well, I'm going to give them money. And it turns out that science can tell us a lot of times that's not the way to go. And I think that's one of the things we were trying to illustrate there. Some interesting stuff. Dana really, by the way, the speaker in the second video, his probably most widely read book actually became a bestseller, nonfiction bestseller. Is the non-scholarly version, but it sure is the one that's really a lot of fun to read and really ask a lot of questions. And the title of the book is Predictably Irrational. And he kind of says in that book that we are not necessarily rational beings. And I think he's got some points there. So it was kind of interesting the discussion that people had about motivation and where things are going. Now, this week, what we're going to pick up with in chapters 6 and 7, you can see in chapter 6 where we start talking about rewards, and what are they, and what forms do they take, and how do we need to structure them? How do people respond to rewards? What do people consider to be a reward? Um, an extension a little bit of last week's work, and this is quite important in getting things done in organizations. People work for a reward. If I was doing this a little differently from the beginning, I might have come in with an example I always do in seminars and things like that, is just tell people to remember these letters, WIIFM. What's in it for me? A lot of people think that way. And in fact, almost all of us think that way at some point. And it really affects how we work for ourselves, how we work for and with other people. It's a very powerful force, and rewards have a lot to do with it. The other point I was going to make in chapter 7, we move on and start talking about decision making and creativity. And each one of these, we're just going to scratch the surface here, because each one of these could be its own program. Never mind course, its own program. Decision making, there's a science to decision making. Decision making is a skill that can be honed, that can be sharpened. It's just a real important thing. How do we make better decisions, and what methods are there? Plenty of stuff there to be looked at. And also creativity. A lot of people just say, "Oh, I'm not creative," or "So and so is such a creative person." Well, can you sharpen creativity? Can you learn creative thought processes? Can you learn to be more creative? And what can that do for you? We have a section here even mentions that one of my least favorite phrases, and I've done an entire separate video on this, my least favorite phrase, which is where it asks you to start thinking outside the box. And frankly, I am so tired of hearing about people think outside the box that I just don't want to hear it anymore. To me, thinking outside the box is still thinking about the box. Constrains us a little bit. In fact, I even go a step further, and I've found some other information where I put into some other courses where we start talking about thinking inside the box. You say, wait a minute, we're not supposed to do that. Well, if we start thinking outside the box too soon, have we exhausted all the possibilities of what's inside the box? creativity doesn't necessarily have to be something that has only to do with what's outside of your current reality. It may be quite a bit involved with just refining and getting the best out of what you've already got and making sure you've exhausted all the possibilities. And there's just a lot of work to be done there. So kind of warning people, this is only the chapter 6 on rewards, and then it leads into 7 on decision making and creativity. And decision making and creativity, I want you to keep them in the organizational context because we can do a lot more with each one of them. Then I think the last thing I wanted to mention here this evening is you'll now see at the end of the unit just what you've all been waiting for, right? A midterm. And I changed what we want to do here. Professor Watchfogel had included kind of an exam. I'm changing that. I'm going to ask you to do an essay. And the essay is going to be about your own experiences and try to tie in what you've learned in the first 4 weeks with some of your own experiences so that maybe we can illustrate for each other what we've experienced in our own careers, and now maybe can we explain it and learn to build on that. And so what I've asked you to do, and I'll explain it now, but it's also the instructions are right there in the discussion, not discussion, excuse me, the assignment link. I want you to describe for me in a well-worded, not real long, two pages minimum, please, but certainly no more than, say, 5-page essay. What was the worst motivational technique that you've ever experienced? And what were the consequences for you in your organization when that technique was applied? And then turn around and relate what was the best motivational experience you've ever had and what were the consequences for you in the organization. And then compare and contrast them, and let's see what works. It's not going to be the same for everybody, everyone. Different. I think we've seen different people respond to motivation in different ways. But I would like you to do this to try to tie in everything we've learned in the first 4 weeks. And in order to do a good job with this, and also be mindful that we do have a holiday weekend coming up, I'm going to make this due at the end of week 5. So it's due on Sunday, I believe it's Sunday, June 5th, not this upcoming Sunday, May 29th. Okay, so that's when it's due. 2 weeks. Do a good job with it. There is another reason that I have switched from taking an exam to writing an essay, and it's one of the things that I really want people to work on, particularly at this point, by the time you're up in a 400 level course, is to work on your writing. Writing and communicating is one of the weakest skills in business today. It's definitely one of the weakest skills we see in all across higher education, not just our university. Every university and college, people complain about the state of writing. Well, the only way you get better at writing is to write. So that's another reason we do it. So I am going to include a little piece on writing standards. I'll put it back into the course information. You can look there and see what I consider good writing, and hopefully we'll be able to just breeze right through. If the discussion boards have anything to do with it, this is a pretty expressive group, and most people, I would say as a rule, this particular class tends to write a little better than a lot that I've seen. So keep it up, and we'll see where we go. So that's where we are this Sunday evening. Again, I appreciate the effort everyone's putting in. I think the transition has gone fairly smoothly, and the course is becoming a little bit more back to tailoring it the way I want to do it. Don't get overwhelmed by the amount of information in the unit. I realize this unit looks like an overwhelming amount of material, but when you really get into it, it's not that bad. So again, if there's any questions, please contact me. I'd be more than happy to try to answer them. And good luck with everything. And I hope I'll probably be back next Sunday with another message. Okay? Thanks. Good night.